Sound check one.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the West Harbour Development Subcommittee. I am your host and chair, Mike Spadafora, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please ensure all electronic devices are switched to a non-audible function during the committee meeting. And quorum is present. Madam Clerk, any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have two changes to the agenda. Under item 8, staff presentations, we have an added presentation to item 8.1. It's 8.1B, Discovery Center Strategy Framework, Preliminary Option for the Discovery Center, Indigenous Community and Public Consultation Summary, PED 21090E and HSC 23073, Ward 2. Again, that's the presentation for that report. Then we have an added item under general information and other business. We have added item, an added item to 13.1, amendments to the OBL, an additional item to be considered complete and to be removed from the outstanding business list. It's item 13.1B, Discovery Center Strategy Framework, Strategy Development Process, Update and Next Steps, Opportunity Study, PED 21090C, Ward 2. That item was added at the July 19th, 2022 meeting of the West Harbour Development Subcommittee, and is being addressed as item 8.1 on today's agenda.
Thank you, Clerk. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Kassar, Councillor Crutch. Any discussion on the agenda? All right, please indicate your vote now. The vote is up. And that carries 4-0. Moving on to declarations of interest. Members of committee, are there any declarations of interest? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes of our previous meeting on May 23rd, 2023. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes of the meeting? Councillor Crutch, Mayor Horvath. Any discussions on those minutes? Seeing none, we'll move to the vote. And the vote is up. And that carries 4-0. On to 8.1, staff presentations, Discovery Center Strategy Framework, Preliminary Option for the Discovery Center, Indigenous Community and Public Consultation Summary, PED 21090E, HSC 23073, Ward 2. I'd like to call upon Andrew Smith from the Senior Development Consultant, West Harbour Redevelopment, to give the presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of committee. I'm Andrea Smith, Senior Development Consultant, West Harbour, and I'm here today to provide a brief overview of staff report related to 8.1 of the agenda. I'm joined here today as well by fellow collaborators of this report. We have members of the Indigenous Relations team, Beth Docksetter, Acting Manager, Indigenous Relations, and the Senior Project Manager, Jennifer DiDomenico. We're also joined here by a staff from the Hamilton Public Library. We have Paul Takala, CEO and Chief Librarian, as well as other staff here in the room and online from the library, who were all key parts of the work that we did this summer in order to prepare for bringing this report forward. You'll recall in May, we presented a recommendation report that brought forward a vision for the reuse of the Discovery Center. We presented findings of the opportunity study and the consultation that we had done to that point. And we outlined a proposed work plan to take us really from the project, from a high-level preliminary option towards a more detailed, refined vision for a proposed concept. So that was of the last report. You'll also recall that the report was deferred with direction to staff to do further engagement with the Indigenous community and members of the public to further test the concept. So today's report shares that finding of the consultation that we did over the summer and really builds on the May report that you've previously reviewed. So just really want to note that the two reports are interrelated. The May report provides that full comprehensive analysis of basically all the rationale that we did and the work that we did to build up the concept and what the work plan ahead really looks like, and that this November report just augments it, highlights that additional work that we did, which really supported and reinforced the path that we were on. So on the agenda today, we're recommending that that May report be received and that this November report be approved. The recommendations are essentially the same, with one exception in that the schedule has shifted. It's proposing to deliver the proposed concept in Q2 2026 rather than Q2 2025, and that shift is really due to the passage of time since the schedule was originally cast when we brought the last report forward, and it builds in an additional 6 months in to allow for additional engagement with the community, the broader public, as well as the Indigenous community, and for a little bit more time to do some of the assessment of green building strategies for the improvements that are being envisioned for the building. So I just have a couple of slides here for you today. To recap, staff are recommending that HPL be the city's partner in developing the new vision for the building, and that HPL lead the work to refine the vision for the Discovery Centre, centered around 5 key elements. The first is the library services area, so having a modern library branch with a full range of services, Wi-Fi, books, digital elements, as well as an Indigenous gathering space. And this entire space is still to be defined with the Indigenous community. So the space would be defined, led, and staffed by the local Indigenous peoples. The third element is to have exhibits and gallery space. It would be a showcase for captivating cultural heritage-based experiences and exhibitions. And the fourth element is a cafe, so a nice relaxing space within the facility. And fifth would be visitor amenities, which would be supportive of the shared function of the building and creating a welcoming and accessible space. So the image here is based on HPL's vision expressed already to the city through that opportunity study. And should the committee have any specific questions about these elements, we have, as you know, Paul Takala here today who could elaborate further if there's any questions. Just a couple more slides. These slides here were all shared as part of the consultation that we did over the summer. These are sort of vision inspiration images. They're precedent examples selected by HPL from places across the country. We shared this image as part of testing the concept with the community. So on the left, top left, you'll see a cafe in Halifax. On the right is a branch here in Hamilton. At the bottom is a gallery space in Hamilton. And the third here are all images of Indigenous gathering spaces, either in existence or in a planning or in process phase. And they're all from, basically they're examples across the country from Edmonton, Halifax, and Ottawa. So what we heard in terms of the engagement we did over the summer, and really want to say thank you to the Indigenous Relations team who facilitated a number of connections with members of the Indigenous community over the summer and allowed us to share this potential vision and to test the concept as well as to obtain feedback. I'll turn it over to Beth in a minute, who can elaborate a bit further, but just in summary, what we heard was that there was general interest with this preliminary option, and that there's general support for the Hamilton Public Library to move forward with this project, to build out that vision and develop the concept with the community. We also heard at the same time how important it is to clarify the role of the Indigenous community in decision-making about defining the space and in defining the future operating governance model of the space. And from the public, we also heard general support for the concept, with several ideas from programming to design, as well as functional considerations of the building. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Beth, who can elaborate a bit further on the feedback we received. Thanks.
Hello, Scannell. My name is Beth Dockstader. I am Haudenosaunee. I'm a member of the Oneida Nations of the Thames River First Nations, with strong family ties to 6 nations of the Grand River as well. I am current acting manager of the city's Indigenous Relations team, and I've worked for the city for over 14 years. The initial report that was brought forward in May 2023 was referred with the community directing staff to further engage with the Indigenous community. The Indigenous Relations team assisted with facilitating further opportunities for the team to engage with the Indigenous community about the revisioning of the Discovery Centre. The team had originally met with the Indigenous Advisory Committee to begin the conversation, and during this round of engagement, the team had an information table at the Soaring Spirits Festival and the National Indigenous Peoples Day social gathering as a means to gather insight into the project from the greater Indigenous community. The team did a fantastic job at looking for any opportunity to engage with our community and garner some initial thoughts for the project. So the first two groups that the team met with was the Circle of Beads, which I'm just going to give a little explanation because it's a relatively new committee to the city. So the Circle of Beads is the Indigenous Consultation Circle. It's an Indigenous advocacy, consultation, and advisory table that brings together a diverse group of leaders and advocates who bundle their collective knowledge and lifelong learning as Indigenous people, woven with significant community-based expertise and training to offer the gifts to the circle, our community, and as a voice to resonate. The team then met with the Indigenous Community Advisory Board, which is also called ICAB, and ICAB is responsible for setting the direction to address Indigenous homelessness in Hamilton. However, there is a crossover between the ICAB and the Coalition of Indigenous Leadership in Hamilton, as many of their members are on both boards. So we were able to sort of encompass both of those when we met with ICAB. So after meeting with the community, the overall consensus was that there is general interest and support for the preliminary concept and general support for the Hamilton Public Library to move forward with the work to develop the concept further. As Andrew was sort of mentioning, the reoccurring themes that came out of the community conversations and consultations was when it came to the consultation, the community was very vocal that consultation needs to happen at inception of these ideas, that the community does not want to be brought ideas that, to support ideas that they haven't been involved in giving their reflections to or their ideas to. And I think that that's something that was really important that was brought out. And they've also mentioned that during the consultation and the process, the consultation and the conversations need to remain consistent through all the project stages and make sure there's Indigenous involvement at every step of the way. As Andrea mentioned as well, governance, it was also emphasized that clarifying aspects of governance is integral to projects moving forward. The governance needs to be defined early on to clarify the involvement and the role of Indigenous community and how they're going to make decisions about the project moving forward. The project must also include Indigenous ways of thinking, knowing, and doing, and should be incorporated into the process, the redesign, and the ongoing community consultation regarding this project. If the space is going to be the community expressed the importance of the location and what it would mean to our community to have a space within this location. It's a means for us to gather close to the water for ceremony and as a culturally sensitive and protected place where we can gather and share. The community is very excited at the potential of this space has to offer our community and look forward to the continued conversations while the scope of the project continues to evolve. Nyawa.
Okay, thank you, Senior Development Consultant Smith and Acting Manager Dockstader for that presentation and information. This time we're going to see if there's any discussion on the presentation, and we do with Councillor Crutch. Go ahead, please.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the work you did. I'm the one that moved the motion to ask for a bit of a delay so we could have more consultation. I was at the Soaring Spirit Festival in the summer, had a chance to talk with Shelley Hill, the former manager for Indigenous Relations, had a chance to talk to her during the meeting and afterwards. I know there's a lot of follow-up, and the thing I guess I was missing from the last meeting was what you were just able to say, right? Which was there's a lot of excitement from the community about this project. That remains super important to me because I think that we have a huge opportunity here to include the whole Indigenous community in all its diversity on the waterfront through Macassa, through all the Relations Project, through access to the Discovery Center. And for me, that synthesis and the ability to connect those things together, to give an opportunity for people to be more comfortable and knowing what the idea is, and just get the words in their mouth, like the Discovery Center. Discovering what? Like, it's a very weird name now because of its historical naming. People who were around at the time know what that means. but no one's discovering marine things at the Discovery Center anymore. So for a lot of people, there's just a bit of a sort of a hill to climb there in their minds about what this is about and what it means to people. So I think this work is able to achieve that gap that was there in terms of making sure people are connected to this idea. So thank you for that work. Very excited to see so much support for it, and that you'll be involved in this from a governance perspective constantly and continuously throughout the project, which is huge. So I'm very supportive of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other discussion? Okay, may I have a mover and seconder to receive the presentation? Mayor Horvath and Councillor Crutch. Please indicate your vote now. And that carries 4-0. Moving on to report PED 21090D 8.1A to be received. May I have a mover and seconder to put the report on the floor? Councillor Cassar, Councillor Crutch. Any discussion on the report? Okay, and last one, I need a mover and a second to approve the recommendations in the report. Oh, hold on one second.
Apologies, that's my mistake. So you do have a mover and a seconder to put the report on the floor. We don't need a second mover and seconder, so we'll just be receiving this item.
Okay, so let's go to the vote to receive this item. And that carries 4-0. Moving on to a report that we need to approve now. Report PD 21090E HSC 23073 8.1. May I have a mover and seconder to put the report on the floor? Councillor Crutch, Councillor Cassar. Any discussion on the report? Seeing none, we will, can I use the same mover and seconder for approval, clerk?
Yes.
Okay. No problem. I'm catching on slowly. The vote is up. And that carries 4-0. Moving on to consent items. Item 9, West Harbour Redevelopment Plan Status Update, PED 17181F, Ward 2. May I have a mover and seconder to put the report on the floor? Councillor Crutch, Councillor Cassar. Manager Phillips, would you like to introduce anything here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah. You've got the report before you. It's an information report. I think there's a couple key things I'd like to be able to highlight for you. First is, and Councillor Crutch made mention of this earlier on September 30th, 2023, there was a celebration down at the waterfront in which we unveiled the new public art project, All Our Relations. The artwork consists of 5 40-foot panels comprised of thousands of colorful beads representing traditional Indigenous teachings, the Thanksgiving address, as well as Hamilton's rich biodiversity. The event actually celebrated the installation of the striking culturally significant public artwork project while also honoring National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And it was a fantastic day where the community came together, both people from the city, from people surrounding the city, to really kind of use the space down there, like I think many of us who have been working on this project for many, many years. It was pretty, it was kind of emotional to actually be down there and see the space being used in the way that we collectively all thought that it could be used as we go on. And it's only going to get better down there as obviously the construction ends and everything else goes from there. So I do want to thank again the Urban Indigenous team, our colleagues from Public Art and Placemaking who did a lot of this work, did all the heavy lifting as it related to both figuratively and literally in some respects down there for a great day that we had. The community, the artist team, Colbuck Connects, the artist Angela De Montegny, and supported by Paul Rodriguez Glass, Cobalt Connects, LaFontine Ironworks. I would lastly like to just say, and we don't say it enough here, Ed English, our colleague down at the other end of the table, Ed and worked tirelessly to make sure that the construction elements that happened down there actually got place. And when you have an event like this and it's on a very specific day, you really got to kind of make sure that all the trains run on time. So I want to recognize Ed and his professionalism for making sure that was all done. As it relates to the surrounding area, the Pier 6 and 7 project, anyone who's been down there recently sees that the work is ongoing. There have been some delays in some of the elements as we're kind of progressing through, but a lot of the elements are coming together nicely. What you will see, which isn't really apparent down there over the next few weeks, you will see the planting of a birch bark forest. Kind of always have, that's a bit of a tongue twister at times. Birch bark forest. That'll be actually just at the eastern side, if we were facing James Street North, just on the eastern side of the steps that kind of come down. So that'll be a new feature that people, it's always been in the plan, but the planting of that will be a pretty huge milestone as we kind of work there. The work is progressing mainly from the western edge, moving towards the eastern edge, going towards Discovery Drive. And it's that interface at Discovery Drive and the Pier 6-7 area with the pathway that, excuse me, that is also where the new Gateway Park will be developed. Once we finish the projects that are there in the connecting fashion, we can then tender the Gateway Park. That'll be the entranceway for when you come down Discovery Drive. The Pier 6 and 7 construction should be completed by the end of this year, and then we'll get on to the Gateway Park. And the Gateway Park work will be started at the end of this year, beginning of next, and will proceed to the spring of next year. On the kind of good, a really interesting element to note on another project, which isn't the physical construction today. If you remember at the last meeting that we had, we actually laid out a public buildings design competition for the 2 public buildings that will be built down there. That staff brought forward a recommendation to actually say that we use what we learned in previous aspects, and we do a design competition for how those buildings will actually be both designed and constructed. With that being said, a partner out there in the community, the Patrick J. McNally Charitable Foundation, has once again come to the forefront to say that they'd like to support the city in the process of trying to increase the design excellence, and specifically down at the waterfront. And so they have agreed to contribute financially to both prepare the process as it relates to the design competition, as well as the honorariums that will go to the firms that participate in the design competition. So we, as staff, really want to thank the foundation for coming to the fore and participating in that way. And we'll, as we roll out that process over the next coming months and weeks, or sorry, months and over the next year or so, we'll make sure that we thank the foundation once again. And lastly, excuse me, lastly, I just want to highlight the fact that our tourism and culture colleagues have also been looking at the area and fielding a lot of questions from some who in the community or from afar who want to actually are interested in bringing amenities. Those amenities could be both on the water and off the water, but in particular, we've been looking at the on the water amenities for mostly the summertime. Things like paddleboard rentals, maybe sea-doo rentals, kayaks, canoes, all the way up to dinner cruises and those types of things. So recognizing that we've actually been soliciting some of these calls in a bit of an ad hoc basis, staff are currently in the process of putting together a criteria of how we would kind of go and make a bit of a public call for firms or companies or individuals who want to provide those services. So in the package today, our tourism folks are taking the lead on that, and they're going to start to develop that criteria now. With that being said, hope to answer any questions if you have anything else.
Thank you for that up there, Manager Phillips. A lot of positive things happening, and I was lucky enough to be there the day unveiling the art, and it was emotional for sure. Amazing day. I think there was many people down there that really enjoyed the day, and looking forward to more days like that down on the water. Any questions? Councillor Crutch, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. It's Fora. I don't have any questions, just a comment. I want to say that I think that it's really, really important that the project, all the relations project, saw its way to where it is. I understand projects have all these budgetary pressures and other kinds of concerns and considerations when they start so many years ago, and then you end up doing them later on. And sticking to the vision of having 5 of those panels, I think ended up being a really important choice to make and stick to, because you're able to feature so many different elements by having all those 5 panels, able to give each element its due, with having to feel constrained or having to put them on a small number of panels. And I know it was a lot of work, and there was a lot of consternation about that over the various years, with costs of materials increasing, all kinds of things. And so I'll be chatting with staff about that later, in terms of how that all turned out, because I think it's important that we stuck to that. And if you were there and saw it, you'd understand the impact. It's stunning when you're there at the start of the day, at the end of the day, and it provides, I think, an opportunity, and I hope it provides a space for more Indigenous ceremony. I know some of us were at the fire ceremony that morning. I was. It was beautiful to be there, and just to see the impact this has had on people, seeing the opportunity for them to create space down there, to be present there, just to take up that space and know that it's reserved for the Indigenous community. I've been hearing from them, and it's just been a very powerful time. So grateful for that. Glad it happened. Wonderful that we were all there to celebrate. So thank you.
Okay, good. All right, we'll move on. I believe we already have a mover and seconder, so we'll move on to the vote. Oh.
No, there you are.
And that carries 4-0. And moving on to general information, other business. May I please have a mover and seconder put the amendments to the outstanding business list on the floor? Councillor Kassar, Councillor Crutch. Any discussion on the amendments? Seeing none, we'll move to the vote. And that carries 4-0. And item 15, motion to adjourn. Councillor Crutch, Councillor Kassar. Councillor Kassar. We're going to go to the vote.
It's true.
And that carries 4-0. Thank you, everyone, for coming in today, and we'll see you all soon.